All right, welcome to the Lift Big, Eat Big show number 4. Today we have myself as usual and the usual gang. We have Mona DeLacy, Commonwealth medalist, African champion, CrossFit Games athlete, just everything going on there in terms of athletic achievements. Then we have Cole Wolf, 2 times world's strongest man competitor as well, joining us on our call. Before we dive into everything, remember in the description or on the website, liftbigeatbig.com, there's the Lift Big Eat Big Underground. The Underground gives you access to every single training program written by myself, by Mona, by Colm, weightlifting, strongman, building muscle, getting stronger. All of that is part of that membership. You also get access to the private Discord community with all of us in there as well. And there's lots going on, plus Mona's weightlifting course in there. So check that out. But today we're going to cover a few different topics. We're going to cover pregnancy training. So Mona's just gone through that too, around training before, during, and after pregnancy, what you need to watch out for. Obviously, if anyone's been following along in the strength sports or just CrossFit world, Tia Toomey is currently pregnant and training all over YouTube. And then we're also going to cover the European Weightlifting Championships that are currently going. I think Mona's going to start there. And then we're going to finish with the world's strongest man that is currently going on. As secretive as they are, Colm has seen a lot of the leaked videos. So we're going to go down that road too. But Mona, do you want to maybe start on this thing of, I guess, the misconceptions around pregnancy training? So I know you've been told a lot of different things. You've been told you can't lift more than 10 pounds, 15 pounds, 20 pounds. It seems to change depending on which doctor you go to. So did you follow that
Ridiculous.
advice?
Definitely not. I think a lot of the research that, a lot of the doctors follow are very outdated when it comes to pregnancy training. And to be honest, being an athlete, it's actually very tricky with pregnancy because if you go to someone who does follow the outdated research and tells you you can only lift, 10 pounds, I mean, like we know, like that's obviously not true. And there are a lot of good OB-GYNs out there that will actually tell you, like my one actually said to me, you can carry on doing what you're doing. One of the main things that I did end up switching is obviously I went from not doing my Olympic lifting because with doing the snatches, obviously the bar might contact, you know, where I would basically be carrying my baby and where my belly was starting to grow. So I had to just switch that up, and I went to bodybuilding training. And with my bodybuilding training in the beginning, I still made sure that I did what my body can. If I felt like I was getting a bit out of breath or a bit too tired, then I would listen to my body. And I think that's one of the most important things is being able to listen to your body. And just what's best for you, especially if you are a female athlete. And I mean, we made adjustments when it came to, for example, when my belly grew bigger. I would then change things up, so I wouldn't do things like full squats. I would do squats on blocks or on boxes. And when my lower back started to feel a bit achy, I would go over to like things like sled pushes. So there's a lot of changes and things that you can make. And basically, like you said, James, like there's just this big misconception. And also one thing I wanted to mention is there's no cookie cutter program also for a pregnant woman. Like for example, in the beginning of my pregnancy, I had pregnancy sickness. I was nauseous and vomiting throughout the day for almost in the middle of my second trimester. So that also made things a bit more difficult for me. And that is why, if you look at someone like Tia, who, she's going balls to the walls with her training. She is not holding back. She even did the open. She's even qualified for, the semifinals. So she's really, still going really hard with her training, but also making sure that the baby is fine and following precautions. And at the end of the day, that's the main thing. Following, precautions, listening to your body, and just, yeah, you don't have to cut everything out. Just make adjustments. But having a good doctor on your side really does help.
Yeah, maybe we can dive into some of the research behind pregnancy training as well. So there's some interesting, I guess, findings within a lot of the literature. Obviously, the general consensus is exercise is far more beneficial than not exercising when you're pregnant. There seems to be an association between mothers who are heavier. It's more likely that your baby will also be overweight when they're born. So that's an interesting correlation there regarding, I guess, body composition and pregnancy. So exercise can help essentially reduce that. And then the same thing regarding these negative health impacts. So being overweight or obese as a child obviously increases their chance fivefold of becoming obese as an adult. So if you're having an overweight baby because you are heavier because you're not exercising while pregnant, you're potentially doing your baby a disservice later in life too. So that's something interesting to keep in mind. But when we're talking about actual exercise and how hard and how much you can do, it all depends on how much you have been doing before pregnancy. That seems to be the common denominator between all of it. So if you are, say, light tier and you're doing crazy CrossFit stuff, preparing for games, training 5-6 times a week, sometimes double days, you can pretty well maintain that through pregnancy without any adverse effects on childbirth. It's the problem becomes if you were, say, sedentary and then you decided to take up a professional CrossFit athlete's routine. Yes, you will run into problems, but you would run into problems even if you weren't pregnant. So there's always something there. But it's interesting enough. For the general guidelines, you're looking at anywhere from 2 to 3 times a week of exercise. Typically, you want to do a combination of resistance training and light cardio, basically. And it's light cardio. The guidelines that are given are really light. I mean, we're talking like high intensity is maxing out at 160 beats per minute, which is very low for, it wouldn't even be considered high intensity outside of pregnancy, put it that way. So you can get a lot done at low intensities as long as you're exercising, walking. Probably don't need to jog just because you're adding the extra weight. You can get on a bike, whatever that is. So there's many things you can do there. Typically, you want to lift at intensities less than 70% of your 1RM, just because your joints start to become loose as your tendons and ligaments become lax. So you don't want to, for example, start doing heavy snatches overhead and things like that. Typically, you don't want to do static exercises like planks and things. You don't want to have that intra-abdominal pressure going on. With that, you're going to avoid the Valsalva maneuver. So holding your breath, having that pressure down there. Other than that, it's really just being consistent, being regular, doing what you can, working around how you feel. Obviously, as Mona mentioned, she was vomiting. Okay, I guess we could say all 3 trimesters almost. Struggling through those. So she couldn't do what she would normally do before she was pregnant in terms of exercise intensity and volume. So she had to back off and make modifications, which is fine. Just as long as you're doing something, it's better than doing nothing. Other than that, I don't think there's much else that I need to cover. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add there, Mona, or if Colm had any further questions on anything going on.
I've got some questions.
Yeah, go.
So, like yourself, Mona, as a high level athlete, or say using Tia as an example, so people with already high workloads and you're high level athletes, for you, were any PBs at all on the table while you're pregnant? So I know maybe like the Olympic list will be off, but did you approach your training trying to target like something you've neglected, or like is that a smart thing to do or a stupid thing to do? It's like I was just curious.
Well, one thing that I was actually told by a pelvic floor PT is one thing that you should do is, for example, with the first trimester, you can almost do what you were doing before. But I would honestly not recommend you going all out, because at the end of the day, you are going to be tired, especially in the first trimester when the hormones start coming into play, and just in general, because now your body has to now feed a little baby. So I would definitely not recommend going for like any maxes or things like that. But with regards to what you were saying, if there was anything else I tackled while being pregnant, I definitely worked on a lot more of my like assistant exercises and things, and like smaller muscle groups. And I worked also a lot more on like things like my mobility, because I also know that, even for women, when you give birth, being mobile and being able to move your thoracic and your spine because that's one of the things that get extremely tight, especially as your belly grows. And every woman is obviously different. So if you are bigger and if you sit a lot, then obviously your back is going to be really stiff. So I found that like continuing with my mobility work and doing a bit more than usual was definitely a very good idea. And then, like I said, what I ended up doing was like in the second and third trimester, I ended up just going down quite a bit in my intensity and in my workload, just to make sure that, I'm also kind of treating it as, almost like if I would peak for a competition. So I would basically do almost like a deload getting into my, my third and final trimester. But yeah, when it comes to maxes and things, I would definitely just not recommend it. But if a PB happens by accident and your body feels good, then that's great. But just to also state, I'm not a medical professional. So always make sure, ask your doctor before you go and do anything. Like I said, make sure that you've got someone on your side that can guide you through the process. Also things, and not just an OB-GYN, but like I said, pelvic floor PTs are also really good with helping throughout pregnancy. And I got some good advice with that throughout my pregnancy as well.
How do you accidentally PB?
That's a good question, but say maybe you do squats or whatever and you just feel great. Maybe you get some belly strength or something. Yeah.
With you following, say before being pregnant, you'd be following a program, certain numbers to hit, whatever. How did you approach that once you became pregnant? Did you just follow those general guidelines, or did you still have a program and modify it how you felt on the day, or did you just freestyle and purely go off how you're feeling? Did you follow any, what kind of structure did you follow?
So I actually followed like what you were mentioning now. I followed both kind of ways. I had a structured program, but definitely if I had a day where I would feel a bit more uncomfortable, if I would feel a bit more tired than usual, then I would definitely make some modifications. There were days that I just went into the gym, like James mentioned, because I was so sick. I would just go into the gym and I would just do 2 or 3 exercises and just, get some movement in. And I would even just go onto the treadmill, put it at an angle, do some almost like resistant walks, and some sled pushes and things like that. And I ended up towards the end also doing a lot more machine type exercises. So I started cutting out quite a bit of the like dumbbell work and things like that. But structure wise, like I said, I kind of switched over to almost full bodybuilding. And I would just follow, if I did like between 3 and 5 days a week of training, I would have, general like upper body days and lower body days, and things like that. And yeah, but I find that having a program has always just been really good for me, because when I have a program, going into the gym and having that structure is how I work best. So that is something that I continued, and that is something that I felt like even if I couldn't do a certain movement, there was many varieties or changes that I could make to, for example, still target that muscle group, and just, make sure that I go into the gym and, make sure I'm healthy and walk out of there and feel energized, instead of thinking, okay, I'm going to go into the gym to basically kill myself.
Yeah.
It's even if someone's thinking about this and wondering, how they can implement exercise while they're pregnant. I mean, even just if we again look at some of the data, just 3 sessions a week is enough to I guess improve favorable birth outcomes. Then just moderate aerobic exercise 3 times a week can reduce the rate of cesarean births as well. Even just very light exercise. And when we're talking very light exercise in some of these studies, it's literally like arm circles. Like that's how light we're talking, like retirement home style exercises a few times a week can reduce the odds of having a large newborn as well by a substantial amount. But again, we are not, I don't know what the term is, pregnancy doctors. Don't you have to have like, I don't know. We're not pregnancy doctors. So again, take our sayings with a grain of salt. Consult your medical professionals, but this is based on our experience and what a lot of the research is finding within the space, which goes against a lot of what the, I guess, typical medical doctor may tell you while you're pregnant, giving you arbitrary guidelines with how much weight you can lift and how much exercise you can do. So typically your intuition is better most of the time. But
Yes.
do you have anything else to add to that, Mona?
Yeah, James, I wanted to add also one of the things I also watched out for, and obviously with now having the little one, you kind of forget what you did during your pregnancy, etc. But one thing we also really looked out for was making sure that when I do certain exercises that I don't cone. And for those of you that don't know, basically what happens is like there's ab separation that happens as your belly gets bigger with your pregnancy, and they literally in the middle of your belly, it looks like there's a cone coming out. So there's certain movements that we looked out for, especially overhead movements. So even things like your pull downs or things like presses overhead. And I mean, I didn't do any pull-ups or anything like that, but like if you do things like pull-ups, I'd recommend, adding a band and just making it a bit easier for yourself. That will also help you to then not cone and have, put even more pressure on your diastasis recti than what you would if you had to push through.
Yeah. There's some interesting examples too of elite athletes that have competed at the top level competition while pregnant. Like Serena Williams was one of them. She won the Australian Open 2 weeks after finding out she was pregnant. That's one of them. It's another one, Kerry Walsh Jennings. She won her third gold medal in beach volleyball at the London Olympics while pregnant. Another one, Alyssa Montano. She had a very big baby bump, ran the 800 meter in the US National Track and Field Champ. So these things are doable. If you are a top level athlete, maybe it's something you're good on. You can see, as we mentioned, Tia doing on YouTube currently, doing crazy CrossFit qualification workouts. And what did you say? She ranked number 1 while pregnant?
Yeah, I think she ranked number 1 in the Open in the world, which was amazing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. So she would definitely, I think even without a doubt, she would qualify for the CrossFit Games. I actually watched one of her YouTube videos recently where she said if she had to qualify, the only person that would almost hold her back would be Shane, her husband. Because I think, as an athlete, if you feel good and you're a competitor, you won't stand back for anything. But having that good reminder of, your husband or a professional or someone that can just tell you, okay, now it's time, the belly is getting a bit bigger, just go a bit lighter, maybe don't put that pressure on yourself, because obviously with competing and stuff, it's fine if you do it maybe in the beginning of your pregnancy and you feel good and your doctor's given you the permission to do it. But definitely later on, things like adrenaline and, you just put a lot of extra stress onto your body. So I would just maybe, especially if you're a professional athlete, maybe if you are more like an intermediate or a beginner level athlete and you don't really go heavy in your competitions and you don't get that extra stress, maybe that would be okay. But I would definitely not compete at like a top level in my second trimester, for example.
Yeah. We'll give you a break, Mona, so you can keep feeding me there. But to finish that little segment, this is not medical advice. We're not medical doctors, all that kind of stuff. So you cannot sue us for whatever reason. I think I've said you cannot sue us in every show so far about something. Before getting back to the podcast, I want to let you know that down in the description is a link to the Lift Big, Eat Big Underground. And within that, you get access to all our training programs, online courses, and into our private Discord community, where all 3 of us are in there to help you with whatever it is with your training. Regarding the programs, we have Mona, who's done all of the weightlifting cycles. We have Colm, who's done the strongman off-season and strongman competition programs. Then we have all the hallmark Lift Big, Eat Big training programs, Pump Dragon, Flanks Method, and many more. And I've also added muscle building specialization programs within that and are continuing to update and add training programs into our app. You also get access to Mona's Weightlifting Mastery online course, and you get to join these calls live in the audience where you can ask members only question and answers at the end of each episode. So if that sounds like you, go down in the description. There's a link there to the Lift Big, Eat Big Underground, and that'll give you access to everything I just mentioned. So we know it's a good show then. So we'll go. Let's move on to World's Strongest Man Com. Obviously, as you mentioned, there have been some videos released but taken down because the dinosaurs running the show haven't figured out that there is such thing as social media. So what's going on
Yeah,
there?
oh, it's weird. They have the qualifiers, right? And then they have the finals. Today is their rest day. So 30 total athletes. They've all done the qualifiers. Now we've
Mm-hmm.
gone down to 10. They're all resting today, and then tomorrow they start the finals, which will be over 2 days as well. And big shout out to Matthew Ragg. He is now New Zealand's first finalist in the modern era.
Oh
Technically,
wow.
like Alan Hellberg, when he did it back in the day, they just were finals. They didn't have qualifiers. But so yeah, the first New Zealander. Seen a lot of different sites label him as Australian, which is quite frustrating, but it is what it is.
That's typical, eh?
But man, he smashed it. And there's been a few like both Tom's. So you know how last time I was talking about that stone off they do.
Yeah.
Um, so they've modified it again. Back when I did it, it started from like, other than the guy who came last, everyone else was in it, and so potentially the person in fifth, if they were amazing at stones, could beat the person in second and go through. Now
Yeah.
they just have, well, it seems to change each year, but this year they had just second battling with third, and as
Mm-hmm.
far as I know, the results, I'm pretty sure. So the person in second gets to start second. So let's say again, you and I were going, James. You would
Yeah.
start passing the stone over to me, and you have to essentially do one more rep than me, and I have to fail. So I still have an advantage because I'm in second. And as far as I can tell, just from quickly looking, I'm pretty sure everyone in second place did get through. So no one really got screwed by being in second and not getting through. But still, it's still not like, in my opinion, I still don't like it at all, even though it just worked out well this year. But a couple like Brian Shaw, so the first place in your group, they go through to the finals. And Brian Shaw didn't win his group this year, so he had to go into the stone off against Ranu Heinler, and they had a big battle in the stone off. And Tom Stoltman also didn't win his group, so that was another one some people were surprised about. He had to do the stone off, but no one's going to beat him in the stone off, to be realistic. So it's been for me, I've kind of, I mean, because I was injured as well, just kind of didn't watch too much of Strongman for the past 2 years. I still followed it, but not like super avidly. Whereas this year, probably with the addition of Matt, um, I've really enjoyed looking at it, like looking it all up, watching the videos when I could. Um, but yeah, it's still frustrating as a fan, no live stream. I don't know if you guys saw, so it's at Myrtle Beach in California, and there's like this kind of CCTV camera footage of the beach that I
Yeah.
guess, the public can access. So people were watching like them do the loading race on this
On the
CCTV
security
footage.
footage. That
Yeah,
is a
like
crack up.
it's like, guys, come on. And I still like, so I do think they've made some right moves. So how I was saying again last week, each group of the qualifiers used to do different events, which
Yeah.
again is not fair when you go into the finals. This year, everyone did the same events, which is fantastic. But if you look at, say, now Brian Shaw, right, he had a huge battle in the stone off against
Mm-hmm.
Rano. He's had to do maybe like, say, an extra 4 reps of a 200 kg stone. That's a big workload, to then go into the finals compared to someone else who may have only had to do 1 rep. So
Yeah.
from a fairness perspective, still don't think it's fair. Um, but it is what it is. Like I said, it's entertainment is a big part of it. It is made as a TV show first, um, and the they definitely get a lot of engagement off of the stone off. Um, from what I've heard, the casual viewers are quite a big fan of it. But it does make
Mm.
me wonder: does that mean in the future is every event just going to be a one-on-one? Like how far?
Knockout.
If these people at the top, if they only care about viewing and whatnot for TV, instead of because to me they're having everyone do the same events. All they need to do now is put everyone essentially in just one big group, like CrossFit.
Yeah.
So everyone's in one big group, and your score carries over. So if you took away the stone off at the moment, I'd have to check. I think Matt Ragg was in like fourth or fifth overall out of the whole 30. Um, but instead, he's only actually competing with the other guys in his group. So yeah, it's a funny one. And sometimes you'll get a situation where everyone in a group, let's say everyone in the group has just ridiculous, like can deadlift 1,000 pounds, and then you have another group and their max, like the best deadlifter in the group is 400. So let's just say 900 pounds. So 100-pound difference. This 900-pound puller, he might win his group deadlift because there's no other big deadlifters. When the guy who came last, well, probably not last, but fourth or something in this other group could have won that group. So I think they're very close. They just need to swap that scorecard, but I don't think they will. If anything, I'm a bit skeptical, but I feel like it could flip the other way, and they instead of just the stone off, they do like the log off and start doing all these other things.
So what is like
who knows?
fourth and fifth place do and sixth place do with the stone off? Because you mentioned rank 2 and 3 stoned off, right? So what do the other ones do? Do they stone off against each other too head to head?
Now they're just gone. Oh, I think last year they may have, but they're just.
Because how many people are in the final?
They don't bother. 10 in the final.
10. Okay.
So
what? The first in each group automatic, or the first two.
Yep.
Okay.
First is automatic, and then second and third do the stone off to determine the second athlete to go through.
Okay. And that is 4 total people, and then how do they determine the rest?
2. 2 from each group. So there's 5 groups.
Okay.
Yeah, so the first guy's definitely in, and then the winner of the stone off is in. So that's 2, and then times 5, that's all 10.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it definitely like brings in strategy as well, because you'll see guys, if you know let's say you've got 3 events left and you know you're not going to be able to beat this guy to get into second position, like why, if me and you are going, James, and I know I'm going to face you in the stone off, whether you beat me by 1 point or you beat me by like 7 points, I might just hold my energy back and just try to save it for the stone off.
And just try and maintain third position.
Yeah, so that way I've got as much energy as I can to verse you on that stone off. And definitely try to maintain third. But it happens quite a bit, especially when there's injuries. Because then if the other guys in the group are injured, you can pretty much, hold third relatively comfortable if the other guys in your thing are injured. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I still think that athletes get better every year. Like the athletes I'm always backing, overall, they're ridiculously strong now, in really good shape, really fast. But because of the competitiveness of it all and like how high level the athletes are, and because of the nature of the promoters wanting to get lots of views, a lot of the times athletes get left out for people with like a bigger following. So for example, remember when Larry Wheels got invited? He got, Larry Wheels, right?
Yep, I know Larry Wheels.
He got invited to the World Log Lift Champs, I don't know, a few years ago now, but that upset a lot of people. A lot of people could outlift him on the log, but he got the invite because he's got the big following.
So the eyes on it.
So it's one of those things, like at the same time, he's bringing a lot of views to the sport. So, I personally, I don't know. It'll be interesting if they just, like I was saying last week, I would be interested in see what it would be like if they just catered to the hardcore fans and just invited the top athletes. But who knows? Maybe then I'll just go under, and maybe they do know a lot better than I do about promotion and whatnot.
Colm, I wanted to ask you, like, it's quite weird, like, with what you're saying now, someone like him that brings in a lot of views, but yet they don't want to live stream it. Because I'm sure if they had to live stream it or have it all over social media, during the events, they would get more eyes. That's what you would think.
I would think that as well, yeah. I can't say I know all of like what goes on behind the scenes, but from what I hear, I just know they want to sell it as that TV package. And the justification I saw like a couple of weeks back for not live streaming was that if they live stream, it would diminish that product that they then sell to the like the TV companies. Personally, I don't think that would happen because I feel like, say myself, if there's a live stream, I would watch the live stream. I would consider myself a hardcore fan, right? So I'd watch the live stream, and then when it's on TV, I would watch it again.
Yeah.
Whereas the casual, like they're probably not going to watch the live stream, doesn't matter, but they'll watch it at TV because that's when they'll see it because they don't really follow the sport, right? That's how I see it. But like, if you think the hardcores are willing to watch this fucking like CCTV footage, like they're definitely going to rewatch, you know, an edited together package with the athlete interviews, with the pre-interviews, pre-comp. Like, you know, it's still a big TV package. And yeah, like Rogue did it. The Arnolds did it. So who knows? It's a bit of a meme at this point. Every single year, it's like, where's the live stream? Everyone writes in the comments of pretty much every World's Strongest Man thing, like, where's the live stream? But yeah, don't know. I don't know if it'll ever happen. They did actually this year. They attempted. So this is another example of World's Strongest Man, right? You know how there's 30 athletes. They get divided up into these different groups.
Yeah.
And this year they were going to announce the groups once everyone's actually at the event, and they were going to live stream this and announce it all live, and it just completely fucked up. I think they announced like the first two, and it was like horrendous quality, and yeah, it just didn't work. So I think they just ended up announcing it on social media, but I don't know, like there's so many moving parts, so it is easy for me to sit here and criticize, but again, if they're making like lots of money off of it and they're able to sell it, I feel like they could, you know, do a few different things. The other thing I would actually be curious about, I don't think we'll ever know, but say like, you know how there's that big lawsuit going on with the UFC and how they compare fighter payouts as something like 10% of total revenue or something like this. Have you seen this? And then, but with the NFL or like NBA, other sports, it's meant to be 50%.
Yeah, I've seen something about that. Yeah.
I bet you, if you looked at like what percentage of prize money like they made, I bet you it's abysmal way, because the first place just got put up to 70K US. So that's
that
first
it?
place for World's Strongest Man. Yeah, that's
Holy
first place.
shit.
And that it used to be 50. It used to be 50 for years.
I was going to actually ask what is the prize money for an event like that? Because you would think it's massive.
Yeah, I think so, but yeah, that's it. So 70,000 US dollars for like if you look at the amount of effort that's required in training at that level, and then like the food, the like supplements and everything,
Yeah,
like
the
it's
food
pretty
is
ridiculous.
70,000.
Very harsh. Yeah, exactly. And like then I know in any high level sport you have like a big impact on the body, but especially so with strongmen, with guys trying to be so big, move such heavy weights as quick as they can. Yeah, like in theory, right? So the goal is essentially, if you're going to be one of those top guys, you need to have good sponsors to look after you, because realistically, like let's say you dedicated your life to winning, and I don't know, like let's say you won 3 years in a row and won 70 grand each year, like, and then you retire, you know, why not have just worked a normal job? I know it's a thing of like just passion and wanting to do it, but it's not really a good payout, is it?
Well, you would probably do Arnold's and stuff as well, right? To try, because would Arnold's pay well?
So the Arnold's does pay. Actually, I don't know what they paid this year, but yeah, in the past they've been the highest paying one.
Yeah.
So I think they're like, back from memory when I was doing it, they were around 85. I think they might be 100. Rogue now is the biggest.
Yeah, I was going to ask Rogue.
Yeah, so Rogue stepped it up. I think they were around like the 150 to 180 mark, but with possibly some of it paid in crypto or something like this. But I do think Rogue is a big step up, and would be great if it could keep going. But yeah, we'll see, I guess.
So you
I
just need
think
to
it's
move to
also
the
very
States and
exciting.
train for the Invitational.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think it's also really exciting that, you can go and watch the Rogue Invitational, the CrossFit, and the Strongman. And this year they had weightlifting too. Was it this year or last year? I'm a little bit confused with my dates. Well,
Wait,
the last
I don't
time
Yeah,
it
know.
was the
years
Rogue
ago.
event. Yeah, I don't know if it was this year or the end of last year, but it was really nice to be able to see that they had weightlifting as well. Obviously, the weightlifting wasn't. I don't know if it had as many or if it was broadcast as well, but they had a competition there. And then, like, the strongman and then with the CrossFit. So I think it makes it really exciting for
Yeah,
viewers to be able to see all of those sports, which kind of gets categorized together as, just like these hardcore strength sports. It's brutal. It's, you push your body to the limits. And I think it's just super exciting how each one has their own uniqueness. That would definitely be nice if they can do more events like that too.
yeah. And strongman has benefited so much off of CrossFit. So that's an example of the pro, like big boys benefiting, right, from CrossFit,
Mm.
the fact that the Rogue Invitational exists. But I have so many clients and have just met so many people, like probably over the last 5 years, who have gotten into strongman from CrossFit, and they loved the lifting side of it. They just hated the running and hated the pull-ups. Um, so we're like, it's almost like though CrossFit introduced them, and then they found what they probably wouldn't have gotten into strongman if it wasn't that, because they would just see it as like, oh, it's just big lifting, heavy. I don't want to do that crazy kind of heavy lifting, but because they've experienced that fun side of it in CrossFit, um, yeah, it kind of takes away that hesitation to get in. So I think, especially combining them together like that with the Rogue Invitational, um, and then yeah, if you got weightlifting as well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, Colm, what you were saying now was spot on. I mean, as much as the person can criticize CrossFit, I mean, they've also been super amazing for weightlifting. And like, we spoke about in our last podcast how, now weightlifting coaches can also get paid a lot more because it's a lot more recognized and there's a lot more people wanting to do weightlifting as well. There's obviously also a lot more, like, I can say, shittier coaches out there because it's
Yeah,
now, everyone wants to make money from it, which is obviously the bad side. So you must obviously just do your homework before you go to a coach and want someone to coach you, and not just, get sucked in by someone who just did a weekend course, for example. But I remember also when I owned CrossFit ECX back in South Africa, I had a lot of female athletes who came to me and said in the beginning, they want to do the CrossFit part, but would I mind if they don't do the weightlifting part? Because they don't want to get
yeah,
bulky. They don't want to, they don't want to lift like big weights and all of that. And the funny thing was, at the end of that year, after my first year of owning my CrossFit gym, I had more female weightlifters who then switched over from CrossFit to weightlifting who competed at, in my team than what I had men. So it just
yeah,
shows you how, CrossFit opened up their doors to show females that, you can do weightlifting. You're not going to get bulky. It's, being bulky is very much genetics, or if a person dopes, as you know. So it's nice to be able to see how many feminine women now go into these strength sports, and even strongman. I've got some of my friends who's gone into, well, I don't know if you would call it then strong woman, but because of doing CrossFit. So they will do things
yeah,
like logs and those kind of things. And it's exciting. So,
yeah,
and yeah, I mean, that's something after I played around with you back in New Zealand with the log, and I think it was the axle bar.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I told James, I was like, maybe it should be a sport that I should try and do.
Is it
And
going to
actually,
be?
just before, is it? I don't want to say it on here because then you'll hold it against me and be like, okay, now you've said it live to everyone, so now you have to do it. But it's definitely something that I will look into to do, because now that I'm not hardcore weightlifter anymore and just, competing at, top level, international level. I can now try and do all of these things, and just, stay on the healthy side.
I would still love to see you, even just training for the log, even if you weren't going to go full strongman. I would just love to see what you could put up on the
I
log.
think you need to coach
get
me,
one.
Cole. I think you need to,
Yeah.
I think that's another reason for you to come to Austin, Texas. Come coach
Yeah.
me. I can hopefully go and break a world record. And yeah,
Yeah, you can
Oh,
do the road record
hopefully we can
breakers.
get over there.
Yeah,
what
let's do it.
I'll
Let's
send
do it.
you some videos. I saw a few videos of the under 64s. Few of them, a couple of them I saw actually split jerked. They had, I think it was a log for reps. I'll send you the video anyway. I'll
Yeah,
be
I'd
curious to
love
see
that.
what you think of their technique.
Yeah, for sure.
Now
Com,
you
who's
just
your money
planted
on
a
in the
seed.
finals? What were you
Sorry,
going to
what
say,
was that?
Mo?
No, I said Colm just planted a seed. I don't know if it's a
Yeah,
good thing or bad thing, but now I'm getting excited again.
that's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. Com, who's your money on it for the finals of World's Strongest Man?
That's a hard one. So if I could choose right, I would just pick Brian Shaw because it's his last World's Strongest Man, and it would give him five World's Strongest Mans. And he like when I got into it, he was it was Zadrunas and Brian, right? Zadrunas was always my favorite, but it would still I feel like he's part of that old guard. I would love to see him do it one more time. I don't think he will, unfortunately. If I had to put I think the Canadian guy Mitchell Hooper has looked phenomenal in the qualifiers. I think he's a steady favourite, but I personally I'm gonna edge out Tom Stoltman and say Tom Stoltman #1 again with the just because of the fingers. He's like 6'8" or something, gives him a big advantage. Although now it's honestly it's hard to say because another one of the favourites came in pretty injured, and so Mateusz Kiliaskowski, if that's how you say his name right, but he was phenomenal at the monster dumbbell, so gigantic dumbbell overhead. He was going to split up points quite a lot, and he's not in it now. So there's potential between like Brian's really good at dumbbell as well, so he could potentially gain a lot of points or knock Tom and Mitch down. And then there's another guy, Ukrainian, Novikov, who is also a former winner. He's also fantastic at dumbbell. It's really hard to say. If you put him on the spot, I'll say with those events, how they're looking in the heats, I'm going to say Tom Stoltman. And there's another, so a lot of people as well are writing off Tom because at the Arnold recently, he didn't have the best performance. Personally, I actually think it's a good thing for him for Worlds. Just looking at it, this is only my theory, so I could be very well wrong, but he tends to peak really hard for Worlds and doesn't really seem to take the other comps as serious, which he gets quite a lot of flack for from fans, saying he takes the spot and whatnot from other guys who are going to go hard. But anyway, I actually see that as a good sign that he hasn't, whereas other guys who pushed really hard at Arnold's, although it's been a couple months in between, I think that it still has an effect compared to the guy who won it last year, so Tom Stoltman, who took it easier at Arnold's, and now he's going hard for Worlds. Also has pretty decent events for him with the fingers in there. Yeah, so he'll be my pick. And then next week when we speak, we'll know who won, and we can either say I was right or wrong.
If only we could bet on Strongman and we could get DraftKings as a sponsor on here, and we could have Com do the prediction breakdown show of all the Strongman events.
Well, they're trying to. I don't know if you saw with the sale or like the combination of the UFC and the WWE. They're trying to get betting on the WWE like a main thing. So
how do you bet on a scripted show? That can't be legal.
If you can bet on that, I bet they'll make it work. If you can bet on that, I'm sure they can make Strongman work as well.
Oh my gosh. I was talking to a company in the boxing space, and it was they call it Bally. So for us in New Zealand and stuff, it would be Bally.
Belly.
So it would be Ballies. But here it's Bally's, the casino. And they have this tech, and they were looking to do micro betting on boxing and MMA. So they had these boxing sensors.
Like
so you know how you can bet, how you can bet ball by ball in cricket. So you can bet like the next ball, is it going to be over 1 run, below 1 run, a wicket, whatever. You can literally bet live during the over. And they wanted to do the same within MMA and boxing. So you'll be able to bet like how many punches will be thrown in the next minute, what's going to happen in the next 30 seconds, basically, and just creaming off these micro bets. But they're under investigation because Bally's, they would own every piece of technology. They would be the promoters of the fight. They would have the tech. They would have the gambling platform. So then it's kind of like, are you going to fix it and like change things and stuff? So I can imagine the same thing happens with the WWE and that thing. If they own the WWE, script the WWE, but then also release the odds, then they can manipulate what they want. So I don't see how that will go through.
Sounds like Wall Street.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. But
with
it's
their
pretty
algorithms.
interesting space. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, hopefully one day you can bet on strongman. That'd be awesome. Then we'll have a strongman prediction show in here. But Mona, we got the European Championships in weightlifting still going on. It's been a long week, and you've watched pretty much every single session, and Mia's even gotten you up for the sessions too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, it's still going on. I mean, one of the athletes we are super excited to see. Oh my gosh, now I forgot his name. I just had like mom brain.
We're talking about the Bulgarian lifter, right? You're talking about upcoming.
No, Lasha. Yeah. So upcoming on Sunday, we have Lasha, obviously, and I think he's going to be battling it out against an Armenian as well. So that's going to be exciting news also for next week's podcast. But so far, some of the highlights of this European Championships for me has been the 49 kg class women. They had an extremely, extremely strong category. It was won by a Romanian girl weighing under 49 kgs, snatching 92, clean and jerking 106 kilos. But something that also really stood out for me, and I wanted to mention this girl just because for me, I saw it from the beginning. I was telling James that, it's the first time I've ever seen such a strong Irish girl, which was really exciting because, just putting Ireland on the map with their athletes. It's the first time ever that they've won a European medal, I think, with females. I'm not quite sure if they've had a male before that one, but I know with females, it's the first time in history winning a European championships. And Europeans is a really, really big competition, especially in weightlifting. And her name is Tam. I think you pronounce her same Nguyen. But yeah, she won a bronze medal for Ireland. So I wanted to mention her because I just think that was honestly phenomenal. She was a super strong athlete. One thing that also stood out for me is she's a mom. So it shows you that you can be a mom. And I think she has 2 kids actually. And and I think she's 33. But to do something like that to me is really amazing. It's inspiring for moms out there. And it just shows you that, once you've had a baby, it doesn't mean that it's the end of your sporting career. And then a few others that stood out for me. It was the 61 kg class. It was won by a Georgian athlete. And then it was a very, very tight battle between this Georgian athlete. And I think the guy who came second was an Italian. Mia wants to obviously say something too. That battle was insane. I mean, the men or a man weighing 61 kgs ended up snatching 136 kilograms. I mean, both of these guys, the Italian and the Georgian, came out, they were saying that the numbers they are going for is much higher than they've ever hit before, and both of them ended up hitting way over their personal best, which if weightlifting, even just hitting your personal best in competition is huge already, but to come out and break it by a massive number is obviously, it's insane, and it was super exciting. And it also just shows you the mental strength of these athletes because they knew that gold medal was on the line. So with that gold medal on the line, they they put it all out on the table. They know they walked on there, they were confident, they knew they did the work. And it was all just about believing in themselves and just going and then doing it at the end of the day. So that was super exciting. And then, if you guys can remember, on last week's podcast, I spoke about this Bulgarian athlete. His name is Carlos Nazar. He's in the 89 kilogram class. He lifted, I think it was yesterday or the day before. And like expected, he made he basically went out there, broke a world record. It was a big show. And something that was really, it was almost mind blowing for me is with his first clean and jerk, he came out and he did a 205 kilogram clean and jerk in the 89 kg class. He then went in his second attempt and he did a 221 kilograms. Now, again, if you know weightlifting, if you have done a 205 or any number that you've done, I mean, jumping 10 kilograms is a huge number, or even 5 kilograms is a huge number. Normally, athletes will jump like 2 or 3 kilograms, especially at that level, because they're already so close to their personal best. But for him to come out and do a 221, what is that? 16 kgs above what he did, or above his 205, and then going out and breaking the senior world record. He already broke the junior world record in his snatch, and then going out and breaking the senior world record in the clean and jerk, with him being still a junior athlete himself, being only 18 years from Bulgaria. That Mia obviously thinks it's really amazing, but that's
a crazy jump.
Insane. I mean, that's a crazy jump. And this young man has obviously been on the scene now for, I think, about 2 years, that people have been talking about him, saying he's going to do big things. So go and follow him, look at his journey. I mean, it's going to be super exciting. I think that he's already also qualified for the Olympics. I think they said he's lying second at the moment with his total. So I'm not quite sure who's lying first. I was going to say, I don't know if it could be someone from Asia, but I guess we'll find out. And then also I wanted to mention the 71 kg class females, that as always, it was quite impressive. And Toma Loredana, for those of you that have followed weightlifting also for quite some time, Toma has probably been the number one athlete for a very long time. Obviously Romania has run into troubles with, doping and being tested positive and being banned from the Olympics, etc. But Toma came out and won the Europeans for the 5th time in a row. And then I just wanted to mention something that was, with a little bit of upset due to judging again. So very similar to what we mentioned with kind of Maddie Rogers' decision. And I had people reaching out to me asking me what is my thoughts on what happened with Sarah Davies. So they ended up failing her second lift. So she missed her first lift. She came out, did a second lift, looked perfect. It was 126 kg clean and jerk. She's from Great Britain, for those of you that don't know. And they failed her 126. They ended up replaying. So the jury stepped in. They said, okay, let's review the lift. They watched the lift over and over again on replay to see why the judges might have failed this lift. And like as everyone that was watching probably thought, okay, the jury is going to overrule this, making it a good lift. They ended up drawing a circle around where her shoulder area is. And again, if you know weightlifting rules, shoulder movement is legal. It's elbow movement that is not legal. If you had an elbow movement, it will be called a press out. They ended up circling the shoulder and then calling it a press out and then failing her 126. Normally when something like that happens, it's very few athletes come out and make their third attempt. And then at the end, if you don't make your 3 lifts, you end up bombing. And again, this was an Olympic qualification event, which is huge. But then Sarah did come out. She did make her third lift. She kind of just showed everyone, she can do it, made 1,000% sure that she got that lift, which was, again, amazing to see. She got on the podium, and, it's one of those things where the judges and the jury made a very poor call again. And, looking from it from a spectator side of point of view, and also other athletes that's reached out to me asking me what were my thoughts around this. I just think it's really bad, that they could do this. And again, I don't know if it's political or what were their reasoning behind it, but it was clearly a good lift, but they ended up failing it for who knows what reason.
Yeah,
Did you
she
say
wasn't
shoulder
happy.
movement is legal?
Yes. So, for example, if you snatch and you do like just this movement, that's absolutely
Yeah.
fine. But it's when the elbow does that it's obviously a press out. And you see a lot
So
of, oh, sorry, yes, go on.
I was just going to say, so do the judges, like, if could you see them circling her shoulders
Yes,
in like a replay or something?
yes.
Do they have to justify that? Like, are they accountable for their decisions?
No.
So they said it's, yeah. So
No.
the short answer, no. They called it a press out and circled the shoulder. That's why everyone was confused, because the cameras actually kind of went behind the scenes and videoed how they were doing the replay, so everyone could see. And it was
Was
just
that not normal procedure?
no, very
Like,
often, no. Yeah, very
so you
often.
wouldn't normally get to see the judges doing that.
No, you would just
No.
get
So
them
they got
saying
caught.
no lift. Yeah. So that was, I think, nice to see that, they actually did that, and you could see, what they were doing, which again, it made them look not so clever, if I could say. I don't want
Yeah,
to
sure.
I don't want to throw claims out there or anything, but stuff like that is also what damages the sport. And like I said, it confuses a lot of people who end up watching the sport and supporting these athletes. I mean, these athletes are working their way up to the Olympics. This is an Olympic qualification event. If, for example, Sarah missed lift 1 and 2, and this was her third lift, and they ended up failing it for that very reason, that puts her back in her qualification. So, they don't think about these things, and they can't be kept. No one can keep them accountable at the end of the day. So they can just do what they want, and then the athletes end up suffering at the end of the day.
Yeah, I really wish there was a way to keep them accountable. At least, like, I feel like you see this in any sport with a judge where it can be subjective. But especially that sounds really dodgy. If they actually
Very.
circled the shoulder, which is legal, are the judges former athletes? Do you know any of those ones?
Very few of them are. A lot of them was involved in the sport somehow, and maybe they were like a family member or something. And there were some, family members. There are some that did come from, doing weightlifting, but not at a top level at all. They just are weightlifting enthusiasts, as you can say. And,
Like, would you have to do some kind of certification to be able
yes.
to be a weightlifting judge at that? Oh, yeah.
Yes. But again, they can kind of also bring in, and if you do the certifications, if they want you in there for political reasons or whatever, they'll pull
Yeah.
you in.
Oh, say more. Say more.
Yeah. No. It's just one of those things where it's sad to see that stuff like that does happen, and we still hope for the best. And
well, being part of the IWF,
right,
is lucrative, correct? If you've worked your way up, that's one of the reasons. I mean, we'll say it how it is. It's a gravy train. Everyone there is picking up some cash. I mean, to be honest, from looking from myself from the outside in, I know mine is pretty much in, but looking from the outside in, it's more about the officials and the athletes, and that I've been part of organizations
there's a
like that before.
documentary about it,
and you can exactly about the corruption which they supposedly
it's out in the public. So,
but I mean, even take for example, I mean, like, whatever, might catch flack for it or whatever. Like, what was it, the official who had the birthday, who had the cake on? Was this during the between snatch and clean and jerk, or between sessions?
Between snatch and clean and jerk.
Yeah, so between snatch and clean and jerk of a session, they had an official up on the platform with a cake, being sung "Happy Birthday," this and that, and it's like everything. Honestly, everything is about. Then they always have the officials up there before the events. This is like, man, like
When you
it's
say an official, is that a judge or is that like an organizer?
Not an
I
organizer.
don't know.
I think he was just one of the like uh, with the officials.
Just
They can
high up.
sometimes put you on different positions
Roles.
as well. So you can
Yeah.
be like sometimes a judge, sometimes an announcer.
Or out the
Sometimes at the
back.
back. Just yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
I'm
yeah,
not quite
it's
sure
just like
what his position was, but yeah, that's
But
quite
he was
interesting.
taking the spotlight from the athletes, basically.
that's how
Yeah,
it
and
is. Yeah.
Um,
she had someone sing happy birthday to him. Um, it was quite a show.
did he share the birthday cake?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, they didn't show that.
That's the most important part.
Well, the
Yeah,
cake wasn't very big,
because
so I'm sure he ate it by himself.
I have a question not so related to the judging and that, but something I quickly switch back to strongman for a second, but it leads into my question. So
yeah,
with World's Strongest Man, what I find a lot of people who like aren't directly involved with the pro level strongman really like World's Strongest Man because a lot of the times the rookies. So for example, this year Matthew Ragg, first time, his first World's Strongest Man, and he's made finals, so it's kind of rare. And then we also had, you might be able to say this name better than I, Mona. So he's South African, Jacko, and then Schoenwinkel. Is that a South African name? Does that
you
sound
Okay,
definitely
familiar?
so it
butchered
will be
that one.
Yaku.
Schoenwinkel?
So it will be yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I was gonna say not Jacko, but Yaku. So that would be confusing. But did you say how did you say the last name?
Schoenwinkel?
Um,
Schoenwinkel?
okay, then it could be like Skoenwinkel or something. Skoenwinkel. Normally when it's
Okay,
in like an
sorry,
S
I've
and a
butchered his
CH,
name.
yeah.
Anyway, though,
It's
he
hard
was
to
from
pronounce.
South Africa. Their first ever World's Strongest Man, and they've made it through to the finals. And so certain fans like see it as a huge upset, right? And I see it similar to like anyone who knows Matt and NZ knows he's at this level. He's been this like at this level for a long time, and I imagine it's the same with. So it's not Jacko, right? Did you say Yako?
Yeah.
Yako. Like so, I'm guessing he's been at this level for a
Yes,
while. They did
Yaku.
official strongman games earlier in the year, which was it's kind of a lesser known comp, but to make a comparison with the UFC, so Giants Live and World's Strongest Man, it's TV first, right? So you have kind of anyone who's seen doing it is kind of immediately elevated in the fans' eyes as being top level guys. But in reality, there's actually some really top level guys in other organizations. So although in the UFC there's top level guys, but then you've got like Glory, you've got back in the day you had Pride, Affliction, like all these other
Mm.
organizations that actually have really high level guys, and they can come through to the UFC and go really high up. Same within strongman. Giants Live and World's Strongest Man are the best well known ones. And you've got actually quite a lot of like there's even more who weren't at Worlds, really strong guys no one's heard of, who could go through and in their rookie year they've proved they're top 10 in the world. They're like top 10 world's strongest men, right? But no one's really heard of them. I was curious with weightlifting and with the European Championships, does that sort of thing ever happen, or does it not? Because the qualification process to get there is a bit different. Because in World's Strongest Man, it's kind of you can kind of earn an invite, but at the same time they'll just invite who they want. Whereas I know, say for weightlifting, you have to actually like it's a more strict qualification process, right? You couldn't just get invited because you had a big Instagram, or could you? Like, curious about that with weightlifting.
No, so you do have to make the qualification total. So I must say that's actually where they are quite good with, getting people to these big events. Because if you don't do the qualification total, you can't go. But what I have seen, and I won't say which countries, but there are countries, for example, with athletes competing at a world championships level, and it's the athletes who can afford it those will be the athletes who get sent, and the athletes who actually is ranked, a lot higher than them, or maybe even first in those countries, who should be going, but because financially, you have to support yourself, and you have to
Okay.
pay your way. Unfortunately, then
Yeah.
you can't go, which is really
Yeah.
bad. And at the end of the day, if those athletes don't end up going to these events, those are athletes who don't end up qualifying for, the big
Yeah.
events, like even things like Commonwealth Games or the Olympic Games, etc.
So would you say like you could somewhat predict who's going to be, like top five or whatever in each category? Would it, like, if you
Definitely.
know most of the different, you could? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I was just
You will
curious.
it's very rarely that a newcomer will come in and just all of a sudden steal the show. Normally these athletes have been, you know, number one or number two or whatever for quite some time, or even top
Yeah.
five or even top 10. You'll find that the top 10 athletes are very much the same top 10 athletes year in and year out. I think in some of the categories, for the last 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 years, it's been very much the same athletes, and athletes who then would maybe overtake them, or if someone ends up retiring, the one who then takes their place was very close to the top 10, for example.
Yeah. So as a fan, do you find that, like, I know certain strongman fans like that randomness element to it, that there could be an unknown come through. But then at the same time, I kind of like the idea. So I like both. I kind of like anything, but would say the weightlifting, I imagine you could get very invested in a certain athlete over the years, and you might just watch them creep up, creep up. I feel like it would be very gratifying as a fan, like someone you followed, and then you suddenly see them reach that next level, because you could just map out how consistent they've been in the past day and see.
Definitely.
Um,
I can actually give a
yeah.
good example. And I had my mom brain, I think it was last week, when I ended up saying Canada was part of the Europeans. Yeah, that was like the dumbest thing I could have ever said. But in any case, Maud Charon, who is from Canada, is actually one of those athletes who, when I got my medal at the Commonwealth Games, she ended up taking gold in my category. And she was one of those athletes who back then was like up and coming and starting to lift really big weights and just came on the scene then. And, at the last Olympics, she ended up taking gold. But you could see as time went on, she just became better and better and better. She's just like one of those athletes who has come from, built her way up and just reached the top level. And Canada is one of those countries that, I love supporting, because they've had also a lot of, bad luck in the past, where there's athletes who missed out when it came to winning Olympic medals, that wasn't even on the podium. And then like 10 years later or 12 years later, they ended up getting gold because they froze the samples and then ended up retesting the samples of the athletes. And I mean, you lose sponsors, you lose funding from your country, you lose so many opportunities. So a clean country like that has definitely lost so much in terms of opportunities from those countries who do dope. And that's why it was so nice to see Maud come up and win that Olympic medal against these countries that has been tested positive.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
cool.
we need DraftKings to also create weightlifting betting, so Mona can do the predictions for weightlifting based on the odds there.
Yeah.
Once they do a prediction show for strength sports. But I think we'll
I
wrap
can do the
up the show.
right.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say I can do the predictions, and then you can do the betting, because I know James loves betting on things.
It's not very legal here in the States, so I don't do much betting. I wish maybe in the future. Maybe in the future when you guys start doing strongman and weightlifting predictions for the show. But we'll end the show there. Remember, the Lift Big Eat Big Underground, it'll be in the description. It has access to all the training programs, Mona and Cole's weightlifting and strongman programs, plus all the building muscle, getting strong programs are in there. More are being added as well. Again, please like, subscribe, share. All of that will help spread this show and this podcast If you're on Spotify or any of those podcast platforms, please give us a review and a rating as well. But as usual, we'll see you next week.